The color palette you choose to start with can shape the whole mood and feeling of your painting. In this video, join me as I paint this very moody rose painting, which I painted with a limited palette of 6 Roman Szmal Aquarius watercolors. Hello and welcome back to the studio, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Lee Angold. I'm a botanical artist and natural science communicator based in Canada. On this channel, I share watercolor techniques and tips and bring you along in my explorations of the natural world. If this is content that you're interested in, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. When I received the 2024 November new releases last year from Roman Szmal Aquarius, I was immediately drawn to this set of 6 Moody granulating watercolors. I set them aside in a little tin and then, well, life happened. Recently, while rearranging my studio, I came across this little tin again. I had just been craving to express myself with a darker, moodier feeling. Recent world events have got me down. So I got right to work. I opened up my sketchbook, swatched out my paints, drew a little color wheel, filled it in, and painted out some more mixes to get a feel for how my paints would work together, and then I got straight to painting. The first painting I tried with this palette really didn't go the way I had hoped. I made a video about that whole mess last week. I'll link it up above, but basically, I didn't plan this out right and really didn't get the moody feeling that I was really hoping for with this palette. So I decided to try again. I wanted to lightly challenge myself with this palette to paint a subject where I couldn't mix the colors from my reference exactly as they were, and I thought that would help me create that moody feeling I was craving. So I decided to paint the rose from my backyard. I have this big crazy rose bush that has these bright pink flowers. I'd learned from my previous mistakes, so first order of business, sketch thumbnails. Lots of thumbnails. I started with just little pencil studies to try to figure out where I wanted light and dark and how I wanted to frame my composition. And then, because this is a limited color palette, I decided to do some color studies as well. And since waiting for watercolor to dry can always be a little bit of a challenge when painting really quick thumbnails, I decided to do this in colored pencil. I don't really like doing finished artwork in colored pencils, so I don't keep a full set of colored pencils, but I grabbed some colors that were fairly similar and good enough for a little thumbnail. Once I'd settled on a plan, it was time to start on my finished painting. Some tape, a basic underdrawing, and I was ready to go. Wait, back up. Underdrawing? Those of you who have been following me for a while may know that I often just dive right in and go direct watercolor, even with very detailed paintings. However, I thought that a somewhat more developed underdrawing would help me with the effects that I wanted to achieve with this painting. I'm really going for dark and stormy here, like a reflection of my mood, I guess. Let me know down in the comments below if any of you have this experience where you resonate more with different color palettes or different subjects depending on how you're feeling, like your mood, your general well-being, how you feel about the world. Does that reflect in what kind of art you appreciate? I think in my case, I'm always happy to paint, I guess, kind of morbid and creepy subjects. I've kind of made a career of painting crusty, decaying plant matter, and I love painting skulls and bugs too. But usually I'm bright and cheerful and colorful, and right now I'm really feeling this craving for this dark mood in my paintings. Anyone else? Tell me your experiences. With an underdrawing in place, I can confidently put down some really juicy washes right off the bat with lots of pigment, lots of water, and let them flow around and create some of that stormy feeling that I'm really looking for. This will also be an opportunity to experiment with and showcase the granulation effects of the paints in this palette. All 6 paints in this limited palette are granulating effects paints with 2 or more pigments that granulate and separate. With a granulating separating effects paints like this, you can really maximize the effect and see more separation and more of that interesting pigment behavior if you work in fewer layers and just add lots of pigment and lots of water all at once and just let it do its thing. And so that's what I'm trying to remember to do in this painting. I love how loose and crazy and moody and stormy this background turned out. Then I got to painting the flowers. Here I had a choice. The roses in my reference are a bright, clear pink. I could try to match the hue on the color wheel, but then I would end up with a much more muted color. Instead, I decided to paint the roses using just mineral pink. The way this paint separates, in mass tone where it's darkest, it has more of that blue pigment, and as you wash it out, more of the pink comes out. I wanted to play with individual petals rather than painting one big blob for the whole flower. Unfortunately, I feel like this was maybe a little bit too much of a small area to really get the full effect of that wonderful granulation and separation. I decided to hop around and work on the leaves for a while to get some contrast. One thing that I figured out pretty early on that I don't love about this palette is that the forest green is a very similar but slightly duller shade than what you can mix using the nickel azo gold and the indigo greenish. So I ended up using various mixes of nickel azo gold and indigo greenish to make most of the greens in the leaves. Looking at my reference, I found that the back of the leaves often had a more yellowish golden hue, whereas the front of the leaves often came out more bluish. I decided to play that up, and I started getting lost in painting fronts and backs of leaves and started getting, again, a little bit fiddlier than I really wanted. I'm just so used to focusing on all these fiddly little details in my finished paintings that sometimes I just fall into that mode even when I'm aiming for something completely different. I could feel myself getting frustrated and stiff, and so I walked away from my painting and I came back to it a few hours later. I decided to loosen up by painting some of the faded flowers without an underdrawing in the mid foreground. I used a mix of nickel azo gold and some of that mineral pink and sort of let it all mix together and created some areas of more muted faded flowers. This fun little splashy area in the middle kind of unlocked me and allowed me to be a little bit freer the way I wanted to in the rest of the painting, and my painting process got a lot faster and more efficient from this point on. By the way, I do have a full real-time recording of my whole painting process for this whole painting. I see other artists upload real-time painting process videos as bonus content on Patreon or whatever, and that is something that I'm more than happy to do if any of you are interested. Honestly, the only reason why I haven't uploaded these things yet is that I find rewatching myself painting while editing to get this footage all shortened up really boring, so I find it difficult to imagine that someone else wants to watch it. Anyway, if that is something that you're interested in, I promise I won't judge. Let me know down in the comments below and I will happily upload the real-time video for this in 4K. As I wrapped up and finished up this painting, I reflected on my color choices for this palette. Overall, I think this was a really fun and interesting challenge. I did really enjoy painting with a more moody color palette. I think that painting with these granulating paints is something that I would like to do again. But there were a few things about the specific choices in this palette that I might want to change. The first one is I feel like this forest green, while it's a lovely paint on its own, really doesn't add anything to this palette. It's very similar to the greens that you can mix from nickel azo gold and indigo greenish, but being somewhat more muted, it's kind of awkward to incorporate because as you get more yellow or more bluish in either direction, you get more color saturation, and so it ends up looking kind of dull rather than moody in this context. So I'd either leave it out or replace it with a similar but somewhat more vibrant saturated green. I'm also somewhat unsure about the lava color. It's very interesting, but I didn't really find a place to use it either in this painting or the other one that I tried. So I'm wondering whether I might want to replace that or again just leave it out. Finally, the November 2024 color I did really enjoy using, but it is again almost identical to the color I can mix from the indigo greenish and the mineral pink, and so if I really wanted to play the limited palette angle, I could have achieved this whole painting and the last one using only 3 colors. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about what I should do next. Would you like to see more moody paintings, more limited palette paintings in general? And what should I do with this palette? Should I just remove some of these colors and work with a more limited palette of 3 or 4 colors? Should I replace these colors with other brighter or more interesting effects colors? Let me know down in the comments below what you would like to see. I'm very open to experimenting with more of this moody palette idea, but playing around with it. So just let me know and I will absolutely take that into account when planning my next sketches. For now, thank you so much for joining. Once again, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Up on screen is some other content that you might be interested in. And you can also join me on Discord and Patreon, links in the description down below. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.